Just about 3 weeks to go until Election Day. The 2nd Congressional District features an incumbent who faced a closer than expected race in 2016, but she still won by about 4%. Midterms do tend to be kinder to the party out of power, but Democrat Annie Kuster is taking nothing for granted in this volatile political environment. Congresswoman Kuster, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Adam. Thanks so much.
Let's start with the basics. Why should voters send you back to Washington for a 4th term?
Well, it's the progress that we're making on really important issues, particularly the opioid epidemic and veterans. I brought together 105 members of Congress to work together in a bipartisan way. We passed 54 bills in June on the opioid epidemic, and we're really starting to gain some traction. $30 million now coming to New Hampshire because of the efforts that I put in to increase that percentage because we've been so hard hit. And on veterans, again, bringing people together. I was one of 2 Democrats on a bipartisan bill, the VA Mission Act, and I worked with Senator Sullivan from Alaska to make sure that New Hampshire veterans who are uniquely situated have the opportunity to get care in the community if that's what they need. So I'm proud of my record. I'll stand by it, and I very much look forward to one more term here to make a difference in people's lives.
The nation is still trying to recover a little bit, I think, from this very divisive battle over the nomination to the Supreme Court of Brett Kavanaugh. You're an attorney. Do you trust that his rulings from the highest bench in the land will be nonpartisan?
Well, here's what I know about the Supreme Court. They will work together, and they have a tradition of nonpartisanship, frankly, of not letting politics enter. Personally, I was shocked by some of the comments he made. I know he has a history as a Republican operative, if you will, and I questioned his demeanor and his temperament. But I have great faith, Justice Roberts as the Chief Justice, but also Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor. These are people who are going to bring him in and say, listen, these are important decisions, but this is the judicial branch. And what I always point to in our Constitution, our forefathers thought this through. It's a balance of power. The executive branch, the legislative, and then the judicial, which is not political. And I think that he will, his colleagues will impress that upon him.
Democrats were strident and sustained in their criticism of Judge Kavanaugh. For them, this was both a deeply felt and a moral stand. Why aren't we seeing the same sustained level of opposition, criticism, the like of State Senator Jeff Woodburn here in New Hampshire, who is facing actual criminal charges for domestic violence?
Absolutely, and I think you saw the entire federal delegation, myself included, calling for Jeff Woodburn to step down from his position. Look, the criminal justice system will follow this process through. Certainly, if he is convicted, I expect that he will leave the Senate, and I think that's the right answer. He stepped down from his position as president of the head of the Democratic Party in the Senate, and I think his colleagues will hold him accountable, and the people of New Hampshire will hold him accountable.
Now that the bar has been set at a very high level with Democrats, with Mr. Kavanaugh, in terms of a single accusation prompting, saying, you know, this person can go no farther, have you reevaluated your own opinion of President Bill Clinton, who's faced several sexual assault allegations over the years?
You know, this is the beauty of the Me Too moment and the Me Too movement, is that everybody is reevaluating. And I would be the first to say that as a country, we did not take the allegations sufficiently seriously. I think what's important now is having this conversation and holding people accountable. And I think, you know, I think frankly that was probably part of people's sentiments toward Hillary Clinton. It might not be fair that it was toward her, but I think you heard that in voters. They had those concerns. Other candidates that might be thinking of running, if they have these accusations in their past, this would be a terrible time to try to come forward. So to me, you know, I think if people are considering their future in their actions right now, that's a good thing. And I certainly think we should raise a generation and we should hold people accountable for the way they act. This is an important moment, and I think this conversation is long overdue.
Would you campaign with Bill Clinton if he asked to come here?
I expect I wouldn't at this point, and I think that's a pretty big statement. I've known him in the past, but I think it would be very uncomfortable to campaign with him at this point, and I think that everyone needs to take stock of where we are in this moment in time, and we need to be consistent. We can't pick and choose. I've also called for the resignation of other members of Congress that have stepped down when allegations came forward about them. And I believe in our criminal justice system, but I also believe that when someone comes forward, they should be heard, and we should take that seriously.
If we see a Democratic Congress in 2019, what is at the top of your legislative agenda?
Well, look, first and foremost, I want to make sure we shore up Social Security and Medicare. I'm very troubled by the comments that are being made. Eddie Edwards in the 1st District saying people need to be weaned off Social Security. I'm going to fight for Social Security and Medicare, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they're sustainable for the long run. We also have much work to be done in terms of the workplace. Paid family and medical leave is a big issue here in New Hampshire. I think it should be an issue nationally. I think we should have a federal response that can be based upon unemployment insurance or some mechanism, but we need to support families in the workplace. I hear stories all the time how difficult it is getting started. Our wages are not high enough. Our school loans are too high, and the cost of housing is too high. And it's a very difficult time to get started and to sustain working class families. So boosting wages, providing health care across the board, the Medicaid expansion is critically important here in New Hampshire and across the country. And making sure that people have the quality of life, they can afford the housing, and they can retire with dignity.
Campaign finance reform, you're a supporter.
Yes.
At the same time, you're also a very prolific fundraiser, too. So I know it's a tough world to operate in. It's kind of Washington works the way it does.
What I know is that people support me from around the country, primarily individuals, but some companies and organizations, the Sierra Club, Planned Parenthood, those type of organizations. And look, I've worked very, very hard for the people of the state of New Hampshire. I will continue to, but I do support campaign finance reform. I think we should change the way that we handle our elections, and I think that we should limit particularly that dark outside money that right now is unlimited. We have total disclosure, so you can talk about any donor. And I think that's important. The American people deserve that transparency, but it's the dark money, the millions of dollars without any disclosure. In 2014, the Koch brothers spent $4 million against me here in New Hampshire. Terrible ads. We won, and we won handily, but I definitely think we need campaign finance reform, and I think that's one of the first things we will do in January.
For real, though. I mean, that's the thing, is it's hard for people who are operating in the system and getting a lot of money.
Trust me, I'd love a different system. These campaigns are expensive, and when someone comes against you with $4 million to knock you out, you have to be prepared to get your message out. And it turns out TV advertising is effective, but also we are running a very strong ground campaign. We're knocking on doors. We're having phone calls and conversations with people, neighbor to neighbor. I was on the main street of Concord visiting small businesses yesterday, and I do that every day, visiting people in their homes, in their communities, in town hall meetings, making sure that that conversation is a two-way street, that I'm listening to what is on their mind. And yesterday is a great example. Meeting with the mayor, he wanted to talk about how methamphetamine is the new big thing. And we're all talking about opioids, but we've got to be nimble and we've got to make the switch. Methamphetamine is a very different problem.
Congresswoman Kuster, we appreciate your time, and we'll see you out there on the campaign trail.
Thank you very much. Great to see you, Adam.